Test. If you're upstairs on 7, please come down. We are beginning very shortly.
That's totally fine with me. The cord doesn't reach. Where I can't even see it, so it's going to be a good time. Okay, that's good. You can't or can? No, I can't see it from here. I know it's going to be out for the audience.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming this evening. We have a few more people coming down, and we will try and get a few more seats for you. They're coming out of the back. Well, shall I start? Yeah. Well, welcome to Swann Galleries. I hope this is a exciting beginning for you all who are new to us, and for those old friends who are back, welcome back. We're doing this artist talk on the eve of our annual or biannual exhibition of African American art, and I am Nigel Freeman. I am the director of our African American art department and director of fine art here at Swann Galleries. So thank you all for coming. And please come down if you'd like to join us. And we're going to begin this very exciting talk. We're really thrilled to have two very distinguished guests here today. And we're also going to be having a brief introduction as well from another guest here, Chris Rogers, who I'll introduce now. And we have our two great guest artists as well, Dianne Smith and Swann Musasama. Really pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
So we are doing a very special sale this year. We are really honored, thrilled to not only have our regular offering of great African American art, which ranges from the Harlem Renaissance to the contemporary. We have on this floor a wonderful selection of contemporary artists that are here as part of a cause. We are supporting two great organizations based in Philadelphia, which is dear to my heart, as you may know. And I'm going to first introduce to you Chris Rogers here on my left.
Okay.
Chris? Yeah, Chris is... I've got a little bio. Would you like me to read it? Chris, I just wanted to make sure I got all your roles right, because Chris is a multi-talented man.
Thank you.
He has many hats. So Chris is currently the visiting professor of the writing program at Haverford College. And his role that brings him to Swann is he is the coordinator for the Friends of Tanner House, which is a nonprofit Chris is going to be telling us about that supports the restoration of Henry Ossawa Tanner's childhood home in Philadelphia. And Chris, you're also the facilitator of the W.E. Du Bois Movement School?
Yeah, this sticker here.
Yes. So you're a busy man.
Yes.
So, and you've had many other roles in Philadelphia at the Paul Robeson House, is that correct?
Director at Paul Robeson House previously.
Yes, and other student and activist organizations. So, without much further ado, I'm going to let you take the mic.
Thank you so much, Nigel. I really appreciate it. Good evening. Good evening. It's great to be here. So I'm Chris Rogers. I'm originally from Chester, Pennsylvania, which is a small city outside of Philadelphia. And it's important that we distinguish ourselves from Philadelphia for anybody who's from a small city, you know. But I'm really grateful to be here. In some ways, my presence here is put forward first by Lewis Tanner Moore, Jr., who's an incredible arts curator and Tanner family descendant, who's transitioned in May of 2024. He was a huge champion of the work that we were doing in saving the family home. And he introduced us, in a connection to Danny Simmons and Key as well. And the opportunity to celebrate Lewis Tanner Moore's legacy, something that we continue to work on. And this is an opportunity where we're figuring out how to do that. And to also note, this opportunity wouldn't be possible without the support and collaboration of T. Iriarte in the back, incredible arts curator, as well as Jordan Martin, who's here. And because we're from Philly, we don't come nowhere by ourselves. So shout out Kenya from Ultra Silk Gallery, an incredible, beloved black gallery in Philadelphia, and we came up together today. So I wrote a little something to honor. This is the sort of first activity of our fall-winter appeal. So I wanted to write something to kind of set the scene. Hopefully about 7-8 minutes, all right? And also thankful for some of the artists who are here, right? I created these wonderful prints using my Jobs copier. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Haverford College. And so Jay Golding, Jamel Shabazz, Danny Simmons, and Lerone Wilson, who's here, also offered work to support the work that we're doing. So the name of the campaign is called May God Bless the Thankful Poor, and particularly in this time, right, honoring black arts and defending black heritage. Our upcoming art auction fundraiser in partnership with Rush Arts and Swann Galleries borrows ancestral inspiration and sustenance from Henry Ossawa Tanner's The Thankful Poor. This is the opening activity of our 2025-26 Fall-Winter Appeal, to which we intend to raise more than $25,000. We're going to need to raise more than that, but we're trying to keep it like a tangible dream, to support the ongoing capacity building and emergence of our cultural heritage nonprofit. And with that, we begin with a story. I got my PhD in black storytelling, which is a good black lie because it was actually in literacy, but I was only listening to black people tell stories. Returning across the Atlantic to Strawberry Mansion from Paris in 1893, Henry Ossawa Tanner's The Thankful Poor, which is in somewhat featured here, right, conveys an authentic message of faith, gratitude, and reverence at a time when Henry Ossawa Tanner's artistic career was on the ropes. He was living back at the Tanner family home at 2908 West Diamond Street, recovering from another tough illness, and admittedly unsure where his next creative breakthrough was to come. During that time, he envisioned and realized this masterwork. Twinned with the ever-popular banjo lesson, I'm sure folks are familiar here, Henry Ossawa Tanner's banjo lesson, for Philadelphia gallerists, the proceeds from selling the now priceless African-American genre paintings provided him just enough resources to be able to return to Paris to recover the pursuit of his life's dream. In the forthcoming decade of Tanner, the artist struggling for his integrity, just as a fellow American in Paris, James Baldwin, might declare, Henry will go on to be recognized as one of the foremost African-American visual artists of his time. The Thankful Poor then serves for us as a reminder that while being surrounded by the love of family and deeply rooted in one's faith, one's present unglamorous conditions need not be afforded the final word on achieving our ultimate goals and leaving forward a sacred inheritance to provide for our future generations. We can and must seek out home place to rest, recover, revise, speak, make, and manifest our world anew. In our current climate, Black-led arts, culture, and heritage organizations such as ours are deeply challenged in finding sustainable support for our operations and growth. The social illness that we struggle with to overcome is a persistent one, with its fatal symptoms mutating for more than 500 years, keeping all of us, no one set apart, from achieving full health and balance with each other and the land. The healing work that we do in returning home to create intentional spaces for exposure, growth, and celebration of Philadelphia's Black arts ecosystem is a reflection of our duty to uplift Black creativity as the sacred method by which we invent room for Black life to resist, overcome, and thrive. We maintain a duty to our people. Yet to keep us fed on this road, we require activating community. We welcome from you all a public love offering, welcoming our new friends, right? The friends of the Tanner House. We want you to be a friend too. Welcoming our new friends to nourish us in this time. There's a mural of the Thankful Poor up at 29th and Dolphin in North Philadelphia. One of the things that a community leader said, there's no food on the plate. There's no food on this plate. Why are they showing us in a way where we still don't have what we need? And this story was a way of showcasing that, like, while it's not food on the plate, we recognize that our connectedness and our grace and our gratitude and our reverence for each other will create the opportunities that we need to feed our souls. So we are grateful to be included in the October 7th African American Art Auction hosted by Swann Galleries to meet this moment by platforming the brilliance of Black artists who believe in our sincere mission enough to stand alongside us with their gifts and crafts. We invite you to join us in nurturing this beloved banjo lesson we've been rehearsing that is the Friends of the Tanner House. Support our emerging North Philadelphia-based arts and cultural heritage organization. Help us save this national historic landmark, Tanner House. And please take home some beautiful Black art in the process. Thank you. Our numbers are 227 to 231. Our pieces, we have pieces from Jamel Shabazz back here on display.
Starting with Jamel's.
Right, starting with Jamel's. Jay Golding's is right on the side here. Danny Simmons is the pieces behind the wall here. And we have to mention Laron's beautiful beeswax sculpture, which is on display over here on the top of that sort of like cabinet over there. So I'm thankful for the time, the opportunity to speak. I'm really excited to learn from you all, and just really grateful to make connections. And just like every time I come to New York, they will always like pass out little mixtapes. You know what I'm saying? I got my little mixtape with me if you want to stay connected with the Tanner House. So appreciate y'all. Thank you. And I'm going to move out there.
Thank you so much, Chris. That was excellent. Well, thank you, Chris. That was a wonderful introduction to your organization and mission. And we feel and respect your passion for the cause and for supporting artists, which is why we're all here. This is a great part of being at Swann. Since I started African American art back in 2007, it's been about elevating the African American artist, the Black artist, from Henry Ossawa Tanner to great artists working today. And we have two wonderful artists who are very generous in including themselves in the Rush section of the sale, which is in support of Rush's 30th anniversary. And we're really blessed to have two wonderful female artists who are dynamic, show different sides of the spectrum of creation, from painting and mixed media to clay and sculpture. And I'll give them a brief introduction, but I think you're familiar to many of our audience. You've seen familiar faces and friends here. So thank you for coming out and supporting Dianne and Sama. Sana, of course, is singular focus is on clay, and your work has been celebrated in not just New York, but internationally, and you've had an international career with a I think it's now a 50-decade year of practice, and you're only just being recognized, which is both good and shows how much work we have to be done. So you've got a wonderful show, a solo exhibition at the Eric Firestone Gallery.
Yes.
So I want to make sure everyone's aware that Sana's beautiful show, the solo exhibition, is on through October 18th, correct?
It's been extended to the 25th.
Oh, good news. Okay, another week. So we all have a month to go and see Sanna's beautiful exhibit. Sanna's work, of course, has been in many exhibits and is in museum collections across the United States. And then I'm joined also here by Dianne Smith, who's a multidisciplinary artist. And behind, I should mention, Sanna's work is in the glass case as well. It's one of her small doll.
Over here.
Oh, that's right. It's over there. Yeah, you're better at this than I am. The small figure, and we also have Diane's painting right behind us. So Diane's a painter, a multidisciplinary artist, and you also have a solo exhibition opening very soon. So I'm going to give a shout out to your exhibit coming up at the Equity Gallery, opening October 3rd.
This Friday, yes.
This Friday. Another event to go to after hours. So so thank you so much for coming, and we're excited to talk to you today a little bit about both of your career, how you got here, your interests, your passions, and what your work says and speaks to, the different themes and ideas, and how we see that represented in not just, you're speaking not just about contemporary art, but about issues beyond galleries. Your work is very much connected to your world travels and your experiences abroad. You support a number of organizations, Sanna. You're really an artist and an activist. And Dianne is also an educator and an arts curator. She's been involved in a number of arts organizations. So these amazing women are multi-talented. You're art educator. You're also an art educator. We both. People have many different roles, but it's part of the richness of their experience that we'll learn a bit about today. So I'm going to start with Sanna, a question for you.
Sure.
Yeah, so your singular focus, I think you would say, would be working in clay.
It's the dominant material, but I'm working on it. But it's the dominant material.
Dominant material.
Yeah.
And you started studying and working here in New York in the 70s, correct?
Yes, I started working and I started traveling in the 70s. I studied ceramics around the world, and I concluded with studying it here in the United States at a school. But I studied around the world. Clay is a material that exists all over the world. It comes in as many. Can everybody hear me? I can't hold the mic without shaking. Okay. So maybe I should bring it up. Where is it? Okay.
Maybe it needs to be closer.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay.
We just keep it close to you.
Okay, so I went to City College in Harlem in the 70s, and I was really studying what my parents could have been. My mom and dad were born in 1915, and one of them wanted to be an anthropologist, the other one wanted to be a lawyer. So 5 daughters, we all were taking a piece of their dreams. But it really wasn't my dream, but still I was honoring what my parents could never be. In order to get to the anthropology department, I had to walk through the art department. And I would go through the door, and there was ceramics, and I would have to make a left turn. And there was something about the smell in that room. There was something about the clay coming as many colors as we are in this room. There was something about it being filled with women that gravitated me to peek through the door. So I was always late to anthropology, always late. And the teacher at the time, Paul Chaliff, came to the door and said, "Why don't you register for a class?" And he gave me an over-tally form because ceramics was always a crowded class. And so I took that class, and then the next semester I graduated. But once I entered that room and picked up that material, instinctively there was a connection. My hands needed no prerequisite. I didn't need a brush. I didn't need a pencil. I just needed my fingers. And my fingerprint went into the clay, and there was memory. And At the time, which was wonderful about the way I learned, there was no syllabus. You were there because you wanted to be there. And so I just looked at the person on the left and looked at the person on the right, and I just began forming clay. And I was literally copying what they did because there was no demonstrations. Paul was making his own work, and Walter Yovaish was making his own work. And this is what our faculty did. They produced their own work. And I think that it was a wonderful way of learning because you went through the A's of Z's. You saw them make a piece. You saw them fire a piece. We created it. We took it to a show. You saw them sell it or not sell it. You saw them not get tenure. You heard their life stories. And it was just a beautiful way of learning. And then I listened to the other students in the classroom. Many of them didn't have my circumstances. I had to register for classes that fit between my working hours. So if I worked from 11 to 3, my classes had to be after that. But I learned from listening to them, and that's what we all do as little kids. We learn to listen. And they told wonderful stories about their travels around the world, and I had never even been on an airplane. So I graduated, and I said, now what? So I went to the library and did research and learned that clay is a material that exists all over the world, and that it comes in as many colors and personalities as we do, and that Mother Nature makes it. And so I thought to myself, you've never traveled, Sana. It's all over the world. Why not travel and study? And that's when I began. As a Black American, I chose Africa, but then I went to Japan, and then I went to India, then I went to the Middle East, coming home in between. And I did this for 10 years and compiled an education, and then I applied to graduate school. I went to graduate school 15 years older than everyone, but nobody knew. But, but what I did have that no one else had was this power to take critique, criticism, and hard critiques and not fall apart. When things were said to me that were unkind, I would just tell the professor, you can't come here anymore. My intuition pays your salary. You can't talk to me that way. When other students would just melt down and pack their things and leave. And so I went through Alfred, got my degree, and then continued to travel up until this very day. So I learned around the world, and I learned in different communities. And most places, I tried to study the language, but every language I studied became a dialect. So I was never understood, but I was a listener. And our hands are what made a pot. And one of the beautiful things about, I lived in Mende land for 9 months. One of the beautiful things about being there is that they believe God beat away the topsoil and exposed clay. Everybody became a potter. So the elders dug it from the earth. The next group of elders prayed to the gods for putting it there. Then the next group of elders wedged the grog, which is fired clay, to strengthen it. And then the next person made the foot. Then the next person made the body. And then the next person did this. And a piece went around, and maybe 400 or 500 people touched that piece. In Mende land, the language, there was no I and no me. It was us and our. And that was beautiful for me. When multiple pieces were made, we fired them, and then we carried them to the next village, and we traded for what we didn't have for what they had. What was particularly wonderful about Mende land is that coming from a culture of me, so a pot would come and I'd look at it and I'd say, well, I think it would look good if I pinched the lip out. And someone would say, and I say, oh. And they said, tradition.
Yes, so you did have to break some norms and some culture.
No, I didn't break it, they broke me.
Right. Well, that is a thing. So you brought your own, you were learning from them, but you also introduced
wanted to do things, but it was tradition. The lip was closed because it kept it clean, so that when water came from God, it was clean. So there was purpose to it. But what was really, really wonderful that happened for me is at the conclusion of a piece being made, I would see women very secretively go into their lappers and put out a stamp. And they'd take a piece and pick it up, and underneath they'd put a pattern. Or in the handle they would put a pattern. Or in the lip, not obvious on the phone. And I would see that. And for me, that was the way of them saying, I'm Sana, I'm Madhu, I'm Dahu. And the other thing that was beautiful, I looked at their little stamps before they would hide them, and I would follow them to their house. That same pattern in their stamp would be the painting on their house. It would be the painting in their kitchen, and it would be the cornrow in their hair. So I learned people by their icon, by their sign and their symbol, and it was beautiful. And when I teach, the first thing I teach is what I call signature rollers. So none of my sculptures have Salon Musasama written on them. They have my roller print. And so if there's ever any struggle, and the person says it's theirs, I'll say, present the roller. I got it.
Well, that's an amazing story, and it's so interesting to hear how you were such a student and sponge in your international travels, and of course there's such rich cultural traditions in handmade pottery, but the traditions are very strong and they've been handed down from generations.
Yeah.
As a contemporary artist, you had to break norms and break traditions in some of your work. At the same time, your work reflects the cultural traditions and heritage that you've studied. We see that in some of your work that you're showing at the Firestone Gallery, the house works.
The house series.
Yeah, so would you like to speak about those works and how they both reflect your own voice and also echo the cultural imagery and traditions that you saw?
Yes, one of the things that the house series I began 47 years ago were the first things that I produced, and they came about because in living in these traditional cultures, the house had a different meaning according to where the people lived, and that was fascinating to me. No one really lived inside their house. They only slept inside their house, or they only birthed inside their house, or they only died inside the house. The community is where people lived. So very, very different from us, where we have a house, we shut the door, we close the curtains, sometimes we build a fence. And so watching that, observing that, that was very interesting for me. The other thing is growing up with 5 sisters in St. Albans, Queens, my mother taught us that our bodies were little temples, and that we were made of wonderful little tiny bricks. And whenever I was acting up, which I did quite a bit of, she would tell me I'm missing bricks and get in your room and build yourself together. which I did, because I couldn't come out the room unless I did. And my mother got sick and was dying very, very slowly and went blind. And I was devastated by it. My mom was a good friend of mine, and I hugged her when she cried and said that God could have taken her arm, her leg, both her arms and her legs, but why her eyes? And as I held her, everything that she taught me about a God in the sky drained from my body. She died 7 years later and wouldn't speak for the remainder of her life. And she tried to learn sign language, but as a diabetic, she had very thick pads of her fingers, so she couldn't study Braille. So she decided not to talk. And it was her handprints on the walls that told me when I came home from school what she did for the day. So hands are repeated in the work. But the idea of building, I'm a slab builder, which means I'm dealing with flat forms, which is very different from West Africa, where you're dealing with the coil that goes around. So I'm building these little bricks. I'm rebuilding Sana in that way. And so I approached the houses in unhappiness. My mother was dying. And so by stacking one brick on top of the other, I was really rebuilding myself. So they're vessels, but really bricked walls. And I measure the length of my arms and my legs to determine the height of them. The roller patterns are on everything that I have thousands of them. I carry with them when I do residencies. So those marks are still there, and they're from the villages that I studied in. And so I'm retelling the story of living in these places and in these pieces. I'm returning to the house series that I started 47 years ago, and pretty much for the same reasons. Unhappiness with having been invisible in the art world. My material has been discriminated against until very recently, that I could not get into galleries. Nobody wanted to take clay. And so the pandemic didn't help. St. Albans, Queens is a very small community. There were no buses. My neighbors are either over 80 or under 14. So the 80-year-old, you're talking about serious depression. I mean, serious depression. So I would go to Home Depot for company, And after getting arrested 3 times, because you could only stay an hour, but the cops were so gentle with me. They knew that something was seriously wrong, that I'm going to Home Depot and sitting all day and walking the aisles. And they brought me home. And then one day, just in deep unhappiness, I went into the living room where I had 4 of these houses from 73, 74. And I sat and I looked up at them and I asked them, are you as lonely and as unhappy as I am? Are you? And I put my arms around them and they whispered to me, you saved us for over 45 years. Go save yourself. I got up and went into the studio, which I couldn't do because I heard all the protests with George Floyd going on, and I questioned whether the world needed a sculpture from me or whether it needed me to be a civic citizen. And so I was torn. But when those sculptures said, you saved us, save yourself, I went and built a piece, and it was a house. So I decided that I would create a sibling for every house that I still own, and that's where I am now. So the show at Firestone has houses from 50 years ago and houses from a year ago.
That's a wonderful story, and thank you for making that connection clear. And
wait, before we move on,
yeah.
Can you just share the story about your student?
Oh,
Please, please, it's a great story.
Thank you, Dianne.
I think one day last week, a young man walked into the Eric Firestone Gallery, just walking the streets, because it's just a street-level gallery, and you can see the work in the window. And he walked in and he toured the show. There are 27 pieces in there. It's a beautiful, beautiful installation. And one of the things I said to the director when she asked me what did I want, because they don't often ask you what you want, they just do it. And I said, please do not put my work in a white cube. Also, do not put my work on the floor, raise it up. And also, do not put them on square pedestals. I go around the world and I want them to be. And then I said, and color. And so they honored that. Anyway, this young man walked in. He walked the show, he walked it and walked it, walked it. And then he came to the desk and he saw my name and he said, that was my 4th grade teacher. So that was from the Dalton School where I taught 30-something years ago. And he's a filmmaker and he's Dustin Hoffman's son. And so this Wednesday, I'm invited to the gallery. They're closing it, and he wants to do a film about me. But he was a special he was a really special 4th grader. When the kids in the classroom would say things like, can you push the elevator bell for me? Well, they did, and I'd say, no, I can't, but I can teach you ceramics. Or when they came in, would say, beat on my thigh and say, take me home, and I'd say, I'm not your nanny, sweetheart. Your nanny's downstairs. Or when one kid said to me one day, Musasama, do you know what's wrong with the black family structure? There's no structure. These are 4th graders, 8 years old, and this little boy would say, but when he said there was no black family structure, Jake said, you Nazi, shut up. And then that's just what he said. And then when another kid said, where do you get these weird clothes from? He said, she's an artist, you idiot. So Jake was really special. He's 38. I haven't seen him since then, and I'll see him on Wednesday. And the first thing I'm going to do is put him in my arms because he saved me there with those comments that 4th graders just say because they hear it around the dining room table.
Yes.
It's not their sentiments, it's your parents' sentiment. And he just basically came from people that didn't want their kid to grow up in a school that was full of wealthy kids, to be so ignorant. You know, he was just wonderful for me, little Jake. So, thank you.
That's so wonderful. What a great homecoming. Another great reunion. Thank you, Dianne. And Dan, let's talk about your journey. And you're a New York artist. You have your own history, and your work has. We've seen, some sides of your work here at Swann, your paintings, but you're a multimedia artist, and you are involved in many things. And your work has also a reflection of your background, your cultural tradition. So introduce us a little bit to your story.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you all for being here. I am a multidisciplinary artist, which basically means for me, I figure out what I want to say and find the best way to say it. I'm not always versed in said medium, but somehow it works out. Somehow the ancestors, the gods, something happens and it works out for me. So I am not afraid to jump into whatever medium I want to use, whether it's photography, video, sound. I can't sing a note, but I can orate really well. So I've used my voice. I've done many things. I have not done movement yet, but it's coming. So yeah, I just basically figure out what it is I want to say and find the best way to say it. As of late, my work has been mostly large-scale installations out of brown butcher paper. I transform space with butcher paper. They're site-specific, and it's intuitive and organic. Most often, I go into the space, and folks will say, I can't wait to see what you do, and I'm like, me too. I have no idea what it's going to be, and I'm well with that. I think one of the things, as an educator, that's really lost when you think about art is the way it can be very structured and prescribed, like things has to be done a particular way. And in my practice, I do the exact opposite. And being an educator actually helped me with that because I would go in with a particular lesson plan rooted in the pedagogy and expecting the work to be exactly the way it is. And one such example, I was in a middle school class and I had a 7th grader that was 17 years old. And he and I were just tussling through this entire process. He just would not do the plan as I had prescribed. At the end of my time in the classroom, the work was completed. And what it taught me about being an educator was that I needed to show up for him, not as everyone else saw him, not as the 6 o'clock news saw him, but as someone that did not show up like everybody else in his life. It taught me that. And the second thing it taught me was that it is not what is in the lesson plan, but it's the interpretation. And I think that's what art is. It's about the interpretation of the work that you're seeing and the work that you're making. So it's not a prescribed thing for me. I am very rooted in, Sana talked a lot about the hands, in how I grew up. I grew up in the South Bronx and in Belize. I spent my early childhood in Belize until I was about consistently until I was about 4 when my brother was killed and he died in a car accident. He was 6 years old, I was 4. And so I was brought back, but I spent my summers in Belize. And what I learned from being in both communities was this idea of newly assigned value, that everything had an intended purpose. So whether or not there was clothes being handed down, whether or not it was, if you didn't have enough canned goods, your neighbor had it. It was this kind of exchange. I grew up in the South Bronx where every door was open and you wandered in and out. The kids played in the hallway on Friday nights. The grown-ups played Pekino and drank, their OE and whatever they did. So it was that kind of communal living. And it took me a while to get here, understand how that kind of communal living really impacts how I make work, how I create. The idea of newly assigned value, I work a lot with discarded materials or non-traditional art material. And this idea of, from the diaspora, you take a little and you make it into a lot. It's about the transformative value of the material is what I'm most interested in. So oftentimes I'm creating something, my sculptures are done with, I'll sit and tear up tiny little pieces of my clothing and stitch them back together. And there's something about that. It takes me back to being a kid in Belize and watching my granny very early in the morning on the scrub board and the movement of her hands and her wrist. It reminds me of her kneading Johnny cake and bun and bread in the mornings. It reminds me of the amount of labor she did day in and day out. Unsung, unappreciated, really. I mean, we loved her, but there was an expectation of that kind of labor. The work I do is laborious, but it's a privileged labor. And the privileged labor I have is in direct relationship to what they did before I got here, how they used their hands before I got here, how they used their hands to pour into me, to braid my hair, to make me the woman I am today. So that's kind of like how I come to my work. It's been a journey to get here and understanding how my lived experience helped form and shape me today and how that all comes through my work.
Wow. That's wonderful. Wonderful. Look at you.
We have such both eloquent speakers. What a blessing. And Dianne, thank you. Tell us a little bit more. You mentioned to me earlier, and you mentioned just now the fabric and so this is recycled fabric, or?
Yeah, when I started working this way, one of the things I realized was like I didn't have to go out in the street and find stuff because I had enough of my own crap. So it was just taking, whether it was old T-shirts and clothing or textile I had from my travels in Africa, and tearing them up and putting them back together. And one of the things I had come to is the ways in which objects have memory. And sometimes there are these imperfections within the garment, but that's the imprint, right? That's the memory within that object. Similar to my installations, working with brown butcher paper, the idea of the paper, it's reminiscent of skin. You know, when you think about the elders in your family and how they're aging and there's wrinkles in their skin, when I crunch the paper, again, I'm using the motion of the kneading of the bread, but also I'm creating, it's like mark making. So when you think about all of the wrinkles that happen as the elders age, there's memory in those. There are things in those wrinkles that become a part of us, things we know and things we don't know, but we move through this world with the memories in those wrinkles. So that's kind of how and the show that you mentioned earlier, it's called Weaving Legacies, and this show is really an homage not just to the women in my family, but again to the women throughout the diaspora who work really hard. And weaving has been such a thing that it has helped communities and villages and women make money for their family. My family was such. My mother had 5 sisters, and that's what they did. They made the beautiful chargers that we see today in all the stores. They made those to make money for the family in Belize, and all of them have passed on. And before they passed, I asked them, well, do you remember any of the weaves? And they were like, oh, whatever. It was very like they didn't want to talk about it. And whatever that was for them, I didn't pry, but I felt like I had to continue that motion. And I weave a lot, but I did not specifically learn any particular weave. I just do it from an inherent perspective. Again, I understand the motion of the hands because they use their hands for so much. So I use my hands in the same way. So the knots and weaves are very intuitive. They're very organic, which is a la abstraction, the way I paint. So everything I do is from I realize now, comes from that same way of thinking. And moving.
And it sounds like, from your family, you're now part of the New York community. Your work and your outside of the studio is very much involved in New York and connecting with other artists. Dianne was, I have to say, very instrumental in helping Danny and the Rush Foundation get these works here. So we're really grateful to Dianne. Would you like to talk a little bit more about your connections to this greater community?
Yeah, I think I will relate that back to, again, how I grew up in the South Bronx, where it was about community and it was about, since my brother passed, I'm an only child. So I don't function necessarily like an only child. I have many honorary siblings, if you will. I have people that I call my sisters and someone who was very dear to me that I called my brother. And I always say that I felt like my brother sent him to me. So I kind of move through life in that way. I like I guess that weaving thing, connecting people, being in support of others. When I started as an artist, I knew nothing. Absolutely nothing, and folks were very kind to me, including Danny Simmons, was the first person really that took the time to ensure that I knew what I was doing and take me around and have me meet people, take me to galleries. I won't share my first interaction where, okay, I'll tell it. So it's more embarrassing for me. So we met at a Carver Bank in Harlem, I believe it was, and Carver Bank at the time had an acquisitions department. And we met, and he said, he asked me if I was an artist, and I was like, yeah. Now remember, I was very new to this, okay? And he said, well, we're having a show at Rush. You know, you should come down. And I said, okay. So I pulled myself together, put on my little outfit, my little boyfriend at the time, and we go down to Rush, and he goes, do you have any work with you? And I was like, yes. So I pull out, y'all ready for this? This little sort of like little portfolio thing, and I was like, see? So, but let me tell you where that came from. My first career was as a model. So we used to go to Kinko's, and we would make the little tear sheets and put them in a little book. So it made sense to me. So I went to Rush with my little book, my little 99-cent Xerox color copy. I thought I was doing something. And he was like, that's nice. I was like, I guess that's not what I was supposed to do. But when I run into him again through some other friends at the Studio Museum. And this, I must say, was like probably the first time I had gone to the Studio Museum. I studied years of art history, went to LaGuardia, studied all this art right up the street from Studio Museum. Nobody ever told me the darn Studio Museum existed. Took classes at the Met all through, took drawing classes at the Met all through. Nobody ever told me the Studio Museum was there. So anyway, I walk in, he's there, pulls me over to the side. He goes, do you have any work with you? I was like, no. I'm a quick study. And from then on, he sort of mentored me and took me around to introduce me to a whole world that I did not, like, you know, Chelsea galleries and exhibitions and stuff like that. I was just trying to do this thing. And at the time, this was like the 90s. And everybody that told me that they could, oh, I'll show you something. I found that I was having more dinners with older black men than going to any galleries. I was like, it's 9 o'clock at night. I'm in Soho looking through the gallery window like this. Because there is no, that's not what it was. And he was actually the person that took the time to sort of show me what the world was really like and take me to places and stuff like that. And so in that vein, I find it necessary to make sure that I show up for other artists.
That's great. Well, we are grateful to you, Danny, for introducing us to both Dianne and Sana. And yes, they are great. And yeah, it's been lovely to hear both of your stories. We're thrilled to have such a great audience. If there were any questions, I can pass the mic. If anyone has a question for Dianne or Sana? Great.
Do I need the mic?
Yes.
Oh, hi. You women are so wonderful and beautiful. I'm just moved by both of you. The one thing in common is you both were educators. I'm a artist, visual artist, publicist, a creative, and I actually also go back and I do teach some children. Do either of you have any type of like curriculum work or great ideas, especially the piece of repurposing objects and bringing it into the classroom, especially in a society where there's no art in our schools? I am a person who's like on the train carrying like pieces of cardboard, but I would love to hear some of you guys' great suggestions of things that I could bring, you know, just from digging in my downstairs garbage or whatever. Or if you guys are planning to have books about that, or some educating tips that we could bring art back to our children.
Great question. Maybe maybe
Well,
there's one thing you'd like to.
Yeah, I worked at Jamaica Art Center for 16 years teaching children, and most of the time my material was clay. But sometimes they would bring something from home or something that they found on the way to Jamaica Art Center, like a stick or a leaf. And so I would say, well, why don't we try and make that one thing in as many different materials that we can? So that may be something. Bring something from home, and now let's make it in paper. Let's make it in wood. Let's make it in hair. Let's make it in rocks. So that may be a way of expanding materials. There's a sculptural lesson in any object that we look at. And so you just have to let them see. I also always couple children together so that instead of 2 eyes, they're 4 eyes or 6 eyes, so that we all see something different. And when I taught at Hunter and John Jay College, I'd encourage all my students, never go to a show alone. Go with 4 and 5 different people, and you'll come out with 4 or 5 different opinions. So.
Yeah, for me, it's being present for the students first and foremost. I remember walking into a classroom and I'm talking to the students and asking about their experience with art. And one little girl said, well, sometimes when I have ketchup, I play with the ketchup and I make, and the teacher was like, that's not art. And I was like, well, wait a minute. So it is, first and foremost, before we even talk about materials, is the respect of what their creativity is and what, where their comfort level lies and where their capacity is. Because again, like I explained about the 17-year-old boy in the 7th grade, right? How he processed what I was telling him is very different than what I expected to have happen. So it didn't matter the material, right? It's about how he is interpreting it. But I mean, I can, go on about all kinds of ways in which to teach. I taught aesthetic education at Lincoln Center for 10 years. And so in aesthetic education, I wasn't necessarily teaching the kids to be artists, but more teaching them how to think like artists. So to have the freedom of expression through describe, analyze, and interpret. So it was less about the materiality of my presence, but just how I saw them.
It's about seeing and looking as well as making. Exactly.
And transforming.
And transforming.
Exactly.
Transforming.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's all the creative process is involving our eyes and our hands, and you engage so many wonderful young people.
Yeah, and really having this idea, there's a difference between noticing and seeing. We see things all the time, but what do we actually notice, particularly when you're looking at a work of art? Or when you're working with materials, what do you notice about the material? Like in this show that I've been preparing for, I was weaving with a particular material, and the material and I just were not getting along. We were embroiled in a battle. And I finally had to say, okay, you got to know when to fold them, right? So I had to let it go.
Give you the mic so everyone can hear.
Hi there. My question was whether or not you've pursued public art, permanent installations.
I have public art, but not permanent. They're long-term stays. I have something up now in Jackie Robinson Park. It's a huge basket in fiber, and I call it a collaboration between me, the community, and nature, because Lord knows we don't know what's going to happen. So it's there, and I've done public art with paper, and that has become sort of a performative collaboration between me and nature. Like, it was up at Bartow Pell Mansion in the Bronx, and they never had public art, and I did a paper installation. So the weather did something, I went back, I did something.
Is this documented? Do you have a video?
At the time,
Yeah.
no, I did not document it.
That sounds like it would be a great video.
Yeah, so I was like, you ain't gonna take me out. So.
Oh, well, thank you. What? Yeah.
No, I don't need that. Okay. My voice will carry. So, this is totally self-serving. Both of you guys have shown, and you've shown the corridor gallery in Brooklyn, and you've shown at Rush and the corridor gallery in Brooklyn. Seeing as this is our 30th year of us doing this, Can you tell the audience what Rush means to the community, what it has meant to the community over these 30 years, why you donated art to continue Rush's legacy?
Well, I did write about this. So I can speak to it. So one of the things about, first of all, that whole court, it was a time. It was a time, and it was a very special time. It was a time in the sense that you went to Corridor or Rush, you've never seen so many beautiful Black people, right? And the synergy in the place. But it was not just the beautiful Black people, it was the intersection between the young, the old. I mean, you went in, there was Gordon Parks, there was Samela Lewis, there was, Ed Clark, there were all of these people just converging in the same space. The other thing that makes Rush really, in Corridor Gallery and Dianne Simmons, really important is the artists that we know today that are, our 7-figure earners, all of them went through, it was like you go through Rush, you do the Studio Museum residency, then from Michelin to, of course, Derek to, Sanford Biggers, Hank Willis, Kihende, right. Everyone went through Rush. That was like your rite of passage. And not only artists, there were people writing about artists. Rush was the opportunity for young writers. Larry Mensa, yeah. He wrote his first piece at Rush. There was no one writing about Black art, nor Black artists. Rush gave that voice, that opportunity. I think curators came, so it wasn't just the artists, it was curators, it was writers. There was a lot that came out of it. It was about the building and the preservation of culture. And yeah, I'm so sad. It's not happening like that anymore, but no. And the 4th of July parties were epic.
Sana, tell us how you met Danny and what were
I'm
your
not sure how I
experiences?
met Danny, but I know that with my material, so many galleries would say no because it was clay. And he didn't say no, he said yes.
And that's
He
also
said
very
yes.
true.
Very important.
Dan said
said
yes,
yes.
to so many
He said
artists
yes.
Saying yes.
that did not have space
Right.
and were not seen. I remember Zenobia Bailey saying,
Oh,
because
yes, she's a legend.
there was no space where she could do that kind of work and the freedom to do that kind of work until Rush allowed her the space and saw her and gave her the opportunity to do it. There's so many, so that is so
Exactly.
important. That's the other thing that was so important, the lifting up of young artists. And it wasn't a prescription, like you had to do this kind of work. And as much as I appreciate galleries of color, sometimes we can subscribe to the very thing that causes the barrier.
In terms of public art with ceramics, I worked with Alternative to Incarceration for 16 years in Lower Manhattan with first-time felons between the ages of 14 and 21. All of them were gang affiliated for protection. Gangs create inner homes within incarceration homes. And Starbucks in Lower Manhattan would throw out these tables. And so I would grab them and put them into a cab and take them to the center where these kids were. And then I would go to Material for the Arts. And so we made tables, mosaic tables that are in 7 Starbucks in Lower Manhattan. So it was a way of taking waste, taking it back to kids who felt that they were waste, sitting 6 and 7 gangs at a table, demystifying that you're a Blood or you're a Crip or you're a this, designing something for a space and then installing it. And I remember once taking a table, we were in Lower Manhattan where actually Jack Shaman has opened up a space now. I remember I just had one guy that day and I said, we have to deliver this table to Starbucks. And as we walked around the corner, as we were walking to Starbucks, and he had one side of the table and I had the other side, and I looked over at him and he was beginning to tremble and get scared. And so I looked over at him and I said, you okay? And he said, yeah. And then he did his head like that and his hoodie came and completely covered his face and sweat began to come over. He was scared. And gangs have territories, and this was an unfamiliar territory. And afterwards, I was heartbroken that I didn't make this child feel safe. And so I just said, come on, we're going to go in and we're going to take this table. And we walked in, all of Starbucks ran over to the table. They started marveling over the table. The hoodie went back, went back, went back, and then it dropped down. And he's a Latino young man. And then one of the young ladies who was Latino said to him in Spanish, take some food. And he went to take it, and then he froze again because it was like a setup. It's what he was a mule. He carried cocaine from one end of the city to the other for somebody 3 times his age. And all of a sudden the sweating started, and I said, no, you're safe, you're safe. And then we sat down and ate. So breaking barriers, pushing things. And then the manager from Starbucks was really wonderful. She asked, could she see a table? And she started putting them in other tables. And we would have an opening at Starbucks where they would close Starbucks for that evening, and they would bring their parents. And many times their parents were only 15, 14 years older than them, and then the other parents, 15-year-old, and they'd all come, and they would say we would hire one. So we would take one kid, train them for Starbucks, how to go work there, but they would invite the entire hood into Starbucks. And so it didn't work, but their tables were there. No. Somebody would come in a 3-piece suit and say, make it overlight, little. Fuck you make it yourself. It didn't work. But still, their tables were there, and it broke the barrier between them and us, me, and they realized, for me, Starbucks, you can't walk into a Starbucks, but these kids were just locked back from society.
Aren't these amazing women making such change with their work and their communities? Thank you both so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. You got it, Denny. Thank you again. And so we're here on the 6th floor, and around you are all the works that have been given, consigned, donated to support Rush and the Save the Tanner House Foundation. All the works on this floor will be at auction. So this is the other part of the equation. These artists are hoping you will acquire and collect, or you will tell your friends who do. And the auction is, I can't believe it's a week on Tuesday, October 7th. And we have a public exhibition for this space. So if friends or family weren't able to come tonight, the exhibition will be open starting Wednesday. We're open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Monday afternoons from 12 to 5. And then the auction is here Tuesday at 12 on October 7th. All this information is online. You can download the Swann app. You can register to bid. If you have questions about how auctions work, please ask one of the staff members here. We have our little blue pins. We're here to help. Please enjoy the evening. Please come and look at the art. And thank you all for coming.